5, 4. Hello, and welcome to Age of Learning's third webinar on getting your kid ready for school. Today's the day that we go through the top 10 list of things that you really should do if you want your kid to have the best chance at success at their first day, first month, first year at school. My name is Dr. Robert Kalinowski. I'm head of Design Research and Consumer Insights here at Age of Learning, the makers of ABCmouse. For those of you who have joined us before, welcome back. I'm so happy that you are able to come back for this next webinar. For those who are new here, so my expertise is in the developing child within the context of their family, their community, maybe their school, and also the way that kids grow up digitally, the ways that screen media and digital tools impact growth and development in the early school years, all the way through to adult life outcomes. So let's get started. Top 10 things that you have got to do to get your kid ready for school. Now, I did some research because I thought, well, if I were a parent getting my kid ready for their first year of school, and I am, by the way, so my oldest child starts TK this August. So we're in April now, May, June, July, August. So in 4 months, my older kid is going to be going to school for the first time. So I'm in the same boat as you. We're doing this together. And I wanted to know, well, if I weren't an expert in early childhood education and the developing child and all that, what would I do? So I went clack, 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 did some internet search, asked some GPT, asked all the AI robots I could find, say, hey, generate me some lists. I'm going to look up top 10 lists. And to be honest, none of them are that great. I think all of them hit on some of those that would be top 10. Other items in there I would say are maybe more like top 25. So I went through all of this information and also drew from my own expertise, of course, to come up with a list of what I think are really the most important 10 things that any parent could do in the 4 months we have now left leading up to that first day of school. So here we go, top 10 list. The first 5 are very on the ground, practical. This is how I actually get my kid to go to school. So these things are more, I would call them externally facing, the way that you interface the school, the way that you interface with logistical issues like how do you get your kid to school and what do you do about lunches and stuff. And then the next 5 are more things that you would probably do at home to get your kid socially and emotionally ready for their first day. The goal is you want your kid to actually go through the school doors and not run away or climb up a tree or refuse to leave the backseat of the car, which might happen. You know, that's a super common thing. It might happen. But the goal is to get your kids socially and emotionally ready so that they can go in through those school doors and thrive. So here we go. The top 10 list with the first 5 being more practical and interfacing with the school. So the number 1 thing that you have got to do to get your kid ready for the first day of school is enrollment. Enroll your kid for school. Now, if you already have your kid enrolled, you can safely listen to help advise other folks or take on more information so that you can refine your enrollment. But if you have already enrolled your kid for school, then you've done the number 1 biggest job you have to do at the top. School enrollment can be quite complex. So we did this process in my house, right? And one of the things that I noticed is that when we went to the school website, it said that enrollment was online only. But the online form was confusing. There were a lot of things we didn't exactly know what they meant or exactly what kind of information they were trying to collect. The answer to that is to pick up the phone and call, right? There's always going to be someone who eventually you can get on the phone at the school district to walk you through the process. Another thing you can do is if you're uncomfortable filling out the online form for whatever reason, you just don't like the form, it's confusing, you can always show up. Show up at the school district, right? and have someone help you with that online form. They're going to have a computer there. They can walk you through the process. So let's talk a little bit more in depth about online enrollment. The first thing that I want to share with you is to sort of take a deep breath and relax and understand that in our society, in the United States, right, there's a two-part obligation. In the Constitution, we have free and compulsory schooling from kindergarten through 12th grade, right? So there's gonna be a school for your kid. If you do something wrong with enrollment, the obligation is still on the part of society to provide schooling for your kid, right? So you can't go that wrong. But on the other hand, you don't want to be scrambling to collect forms and like proof of vaccination or whatever after school starts. You want to do it now. The other side of that equation is that school is compulsory here, right? So a big thing to lean into, to embrace, to enjoy, is that you are not just filling out an obnoxious form, not just tracking down like doctor documents or whatever. You're also taking a step into one of the most foundational, useful, and functional systems of civics that we have in this country. So yes, do all of the practical things with enrollment, but also understand that what you're really doing is you're taking a big step into our civic society. You're going to become part of a community, whether it's a public school or a private school, or you're homeschooling, but with pods that you share information with. You are taking a big step into civic society with doing this stuff. So call the number, find out what forms they need. You might need proof of vaccination. You might need to track down your birth certificate for the kid. Did we even pick up the birth certificate for my second kid yet? I don't know. But for the first kid, we did, and we already submitted it to the school. You might have to do some kind of dental or vision checks. Let me point out the vision thing. That's actually not a bad idea to check out vision and hearing now before they go to school, because if your kid is not seeing things right, the teacher is demonstrating something and maybe they don't have good distance vision, or something's put before them and maybe they're farsighted, right? You want to try to figure that out now to give them the best chance to succeed on the first day of school. So even if it's not required for enrollment, it's not a bad idea to get vision and hearing checked out. Emergency contact information, make sure all of those numbers are up to date, get all the forms. Here's something I heard from our school when we enrolled. A lot of people, when they upload forms, they do it like they just put the piece of paper on a table and take a picture with their phone while shaking, and it turns out that the form is not legible, so then that creates a big burden on the school and on the parent. So make sure when you submit your forms that they're very clear and that whoever is reading it on the other end can read your information, all right? So again, the number one thing is enroll for school. Number two, shopping. So this one's great. Enrolling for school doesn't involve your kid. There's not too much you can do there about getting your kid excited to go if you're just enrolling. Shopping for school supplies, school clothes, that is a great first step that you can do to get your kid excited to go to school. Remember at the top I said the goal is you want your kid to be excited and go through the doors and be happy about it and want to be at school and want to learn. But if your kid has never been to school, like let's say they've never been to preschool, you're not really part of a community where like they regularly go to someone's house, this can create a lot of anxiety that they're going to be out of the home for so many hours every day, Monday through Friday, for many weeks a year, right? So you want to do everything that you can on your side to get them looking forward to this, that this is a big step in growing up. I do tons of ethnographic work throughout the United States, but also internationally. And I can tell you that a theme that I run into all the time is that kids know when they're big kids and not babies anymore, and they seize that as part of their identity. I'm not a baby, I'm a big kid. Well, you can lean into that. Hey, we're gonna go big kid shopping. Or we're gonna go visit your cousins and we're gonna borrow some of their big kid stuff because you're the big kid now and you're gonna need it for school. So go to your school's website or email the teacher, email the office, talk to someone on the phone, and find out what are these supplies that they'll need. So there might be some specific items like notebooks, pencils, crayons. Sometimes the kid is supposed to bring a set of that on the first day of school. So find out what the policy is for your school. Obviously, some schools have uniforms. You got to know what the uniform is, and you have to find a way to acquire it. Other schools have dress codes, right? So you want to collect this list, go over the list with your kid, and make it like an event. All right, we're going to go shopping on this day, on this Saturday, this weekend. We're going to go shopping for these things, or we're going to borrow them from your relative. And you go out and you lean into what your kid is excited about. So let's say your school requires a backpack and your kid's into unicorns. All right, we're gonna get the unicorn backpack. I don't know why my kid has just a huge collection of unicorn bags. She's really into bags, so we've got a lot of unicorn bags, but not a backpack. So you're gonna get that backpack. Your kid is into giant fighting alien robots. We're gonna get the alien robots backpack. Your kid's into ABCmouse, and you're gonna get the ABCmouse backpack. Make it something that is fun, that you can turn into something to hold on to from a happy moment, shopping with a parent, and then taking that into the school environment. You might have to put your kid's name on everything. If your kid's name is ABCmouse, then you don't need to put anything on here. But whatever your kid's name is, make a label, put it on their backpack, water bottle, pencil case, and so on. Put that stuff aside in a special place in your home. Don't let your kid just take it and kind of distribute it with the rest of the toys. It goes in a special place in your home. And you say, this is where your school things go. And when you go to school, that's when you get to grab your school things and go. So the number 2 thing, shopping. Number 3, remember I told you this was going to be the concrete half. All the top 5 things are very concrete, very practical about getting to school. Number 3 is transportation plans. How are you going to get your kid to school, and how are you going to pick them up? Obviously, it has to work with your schedule. A major function of school is that it keeps kids safe while parents work. So it's got to work out with your schedule, has to work out with your locality, where you're driving to and from. Find out what the plans are. If you are driving your kid, and even if you're not actually, go ahead and put your kid in the car and drive to school. There's no school in session, or there is school in session, it's April, but they don't go there. Just take the trip there. You'll feel so much more comfortable if it's not your first time doing it the first day of school. So you guys just get in the car, drive there, talk it up. Whoa, check it out. They have a big playground. You've never been to that playground before. That playground is only for kids who go to this school. And you're going to be going to this school in 4 months. So work out what those plans are, and then definitely make it a point to visit. If there's a bus involved, then that adds some layers of complexity, but what you can do is find that bus route, follow the bus in your car with your kid in your car, and say, that's the bus that you're gonna take. Take them to the bus stop, explain what it's like. You're gonna be waiting there with your kid at the bus stop. But my advice is make sure you have your transportation plans in place and that you do a dry run before the first day of school. All right, moving on. Another very practical one, after school care. So if you yourself don't have the ability to pick up your kid when school lets out, by the way, you need to know when your kid's school is going to let out, right? Then you need to have some arrangement in place. So get together with your relative, or if that's not a possibility for you, look into after-school programs. A lot of schools have the after-school program there on site. I would recommend that you try that as a first option because it's so much more convenient and your kid's already going to be comfortable there. It's a lot easier to stick with the same school site than it is to say, okay, after school, then you're going to go to this other place where they have this other program. So if it works out, try to keep it there on the same school site. But if not, do what you need to do to arrange for after-school care so that your kid is happy and safe and taken care of until you can be with them again. That's number 4. And finally, number 5 on the practical half of the list for things to do interfacing with your school. Number 5 is school meals. So look into your school's meal program. Again, your school's website is going to be very helpful for this. You also have call the school office. If you can talk to the teacher, talk to the teacher. Find out what they do for meals. If they have a meal plan that you have to pay for, load money into it. If you have to bring meals, then again, what I mentioned before about dry runs, get into the habit of preparing those lunches or other meals before the first day of school so that everything is ready to go. All right, so those are the top 5. And now I'm going to go into numbers 6 through 10. And 6 through 10, there's 100 different things you could be doing. But I picked out 5 of them that you could be doing at home to really give your kid the best chance of thriving at school. And just kind of like most of the top 5 here that I already mentioned, everything touches back to the same thing. It's about being ready, and it's about having a very positive orientation towards school. So in all of these things that you're doing, you're getting your kid excited and feeling positive about growing up, about being a big kid and getting to go to their first day of school. Now, with that point, I want to pause for a moment, and I want to check in and I want to ask how you're feeling about it. So a lot of the strategy that I'm talking about is you're communicating with your oldest kid, and they're growing up, and they like growing up, and they feel good about it. And you're encouraging that, and you're encouraging them out the door into school. But at the same time, I want to take a moment to check in with our own feelings on that. For me and for my wife, it's kind of tragic to see our baby grow up. Of course, we want our baby to grow up and develop, but it's also sad. It feels bittersweet. Like her growing hair and the changing facial structure, and of course, she's tremendously growing in abilities. She corrected me on a math problem. She hasn't even been to school yet, and she corrected me on a math problem for something that's very obscure. There's something called triangular numbers or step numbers, and I said 55, and she's like, yeah, 55 is a step number, and I said, what's another step number? And she said 45, and I said, no, the next step number down is 44, but she was right, it's 45. And I'm not gonna go into what a triangular number is right now. We can talk about it later. But the point is, it's a little tragic, right? And to spend some time with your own feelings and with grappling with that, yeah, your kid is growing up and they're going to school, and it's okay to feel sad about that. But when it comes to your strategy about getting your kid ready, it's important to show your kid that actually you feel very positive about that. So with that in mind, here is number 6. Set up a learning-friendly place at home, a school-friendly place at home, a school readiness place at home. And it could be multiple places. So what does that mean? Well, it could be a little area, like a corner of your dining table or half of their play table, some area where you're telling your kid, hey, this is gonna be your school spot. And when you bring home artwork or your worksheets from school, we're gonna tape them up right here. And if you have homework, I hope they don't, but some kids have homework that early, we're gonna do it here together. And you set up their supplies there so that they feel like, it's still my home, this is my safe place, but here it is. It's a physical connection to school. So that's one place. It's like an area to put your work, right? There could be another place by the door where it's an area to put your stuff. So here's a new cubby or a new wall rack that's just for your school stuff. And your backpack's gonna hang on this hook right here. And that's your special school backpack. We're only gonna use it for school, but this is new and special and fun and exciting, and you're seeing it manifest in your home. So set up those school-friendly places in your home. Number 7 now. Number 7, establish a routine. The joy and luxury of not having to schlep your kid to school. Your days kind of start at different times, roll out of bed a little late, just not as much constraints, right? Well, get ready, because in real school, school starts at the same time every day, and you actually do have to show up at that time. For a daycare, it's just not that important. For other arrangements, what even does a start time mean? It's kind of meaningless. For school, it starts on time every day. And the best thing you can do to get your kid ready for that start time is to start early. I mean, way early, months early, with getting into very precise bedtime routines so that your kid gets enough sleep so that they can wake up with plenty of time to get ready for school. So you're gonna wanna focus on the bedtime routine, the sleep period, and the wake up routine, right up to the point where your kid's grabbing the backpack. And you know how I talk about dry runs? Do it. Do a dry run. It's like, yep, hey, we're on time. If today was a school day, we're on time. Grab your backpack and let's go. Number 8, establish a goodbye routine. Now, this one can be tricky to set up because, of course, there is no way to really replicate the real thing of your kid stepping into that classroom for the first time. But you could pretend that they're stepping into a classroom, and you could do a certain ritual, a hand jive, a hug, a high five, and then they let go of your hand and go in through the door. Now, if your kid goes to preschool or daycare, you already have such a routine. If they don't, of course, it's gonna be much harder. It's gonna be much harder. And you're going to have to lean into your kids' natural development that they are growing and developing in their independence, that they wanna do new things. And I would say do a practice run when they're visiting a friend or relative. Have them walk into the house without you, right? Or maybe you're at the library, you can do your pretend goodbye thing and have them walk into the library without you first. Also, you're gonna need the practice for the goodbye ritual because you don't wanna fall to pieces either. Number 9 on the top 10 list, practice listening and following instructions. So this is another item where your kid is going to already be used to it if they're in a preschool setting, but if not, it's really tough. You know, they've spent their whole lives really with like a 1-to-1 kid-adult ratio. They're used to being center stage all the time. If they have to share, then they only have to share with their younger sibling, who they can easily outpower. They don't have to worry about that younger sibling. And they're gonna be going to a place where they're with a whole bunch of kids their age, and they have to be able to share, to not hit one another, to listen, to follow instructions. This is what in my domain we call being disciplined for school, right? And it doesn't mean anything about harsh discipline at all. It just means that you're used to these cultural norms of being in a classroom. And if your kid has never been in a classroom, then that's gonna make that harder. So one thing you can do to make it easier is to play school, right? So you're reading books about school. My favorite one right now is called School's First Day of School. You should check it out, School's First Day of School. Anyway, there's tons and tons of great picture books for kids about a kid's first day of school. So they're getting into it. There's also tons of TV shows. I mean, in ABCmouse, we have the depiction of the classroom. There's so many places you can go to give kids a sense of what it's like to be in a classroom with other kids. So play school at home. Okay, kids, it's time for story time, and have your kids sit on like a special area and read them a story pretending you're the teacher. And just create these like very gentle rules, right? But create rules for your kid to follow while you're playing school. And that could give them at least a hint of what it's gonna be like in the classroom setting. And now, number 10 on the top 10 list of things to get your kid ready for school. Number 10 is to encourage these social skills. As I just mentioned, if your kid is the oldest or an only child, and if they don't have a lot of time with kids their peers, this can be something really challenging. Now, make no mistake, your kid has a huge advantage having spent so much time with you, so much one-on-one time with a caring, loving adult. And that's going to help them their entire lifespan. So don't regret any of that at all. I'm just saying that in addition, once they get into the classroom, they're gonna have to know how to interact with their peers. And without preschool, without close cousins and that sort of thing, kids usually don't have that experience by the time they're 5 or 6 and going into school for the first time. So the recommendation is find a way to get that experience. Relatives, if you have near age cousins or something like that, that's obviously a great way to go. Bring them over for play dates. Another option is if you have a friend with a similarly aged kid, really make it a point to schedule those play dates so that you can see your kid interact with another kid and start to establish certain norms like don't push, you don't hit, you share, you listen to one another, things like that. There's really no substitute for experience in that realm. When I was a kid, we didn't have this term called play date. Play date was not a thing. But in the intervening decades, what's happened is that our society has become much, much, much more urban. So there's many more cars, a lot more pavement, a lot less safe to send your little one like walking out on the street. So we've lost a lot of these opportunities to just be around other kids as a kid. Other things too, multi-generational households are less common now in the United States. There's just lower birth rate. There's just like fewer kids being born per family. So we have just a lot of changes broadly in our society that have made it harder, less frequent for young children to spend time with their peers outside of class. So what we have to do now in 2024 is make those opportunities. So this term play date emerged over the last, 15, 20 years out of necessity. Yeah, you gotta make a date, make it happen. Set time aside in your schedule to make a play date for your kid and other kids their same age. So that's it, that's the top 10 list. I have a bonus one for you, and then we're gonna get into Q&A. I can't wait to hear your questions and your comments. I got a bonus one for you, which is once school starts, stay involved. Meet with your kid's teacher, join the PTA, get on a text thread with other parents you meet and be really active on that thread. Find out what they're doing after school, right? Find out about other parents. What are their lives like? What's their experience like sending their kid to school the first time? Lean into the community. I mentioned at the top that schooling is a great civic institution in the United States. And I encourage you to lean into this institution. We've had the breakdown of the loss of so many of these other systems that are civics in our society, but we still have school. And so I really encourage you to stay involved and to see how much you can get back from your school once you give more. And I know what you're saying. You're saying, Robert, you still have yet to send your first kid to school. How do you know this? Because I'm an expert in this domain. That's how I know. And I'm really looking forward to being very involved in my kid's school as well. So there you go, the top 10 plus a bonus 11 once school starts. And don't forget that little side that I said about taking care of your own feelings because it's stressful. So now I'm very anxious to get into your questions and comments. Producer Kate, yes, thank you so much. Thank you, Producer Kate. I've got some questions for you right here. This is a question. How can I help my daughter build positive relationships with peers and teachers from the start? Yeah, I mentioned those in the top 10, but I'll just focus on this. So build positive relationships with peers and teachers at the start. You want to build up the teacher before your kid even meets the teacher, right? So by playing school, by reading books about school, you're starting to create this image for your kid that it's like, wow, school's awesome. Your teacher is a hero. That's great. You want to build that up. You certainly never want to speak disparagingly of school or your teacher, right? Your kid is going to be looking to you for a lead on, well, how am I supposed to think about this whole thing, right? Is this sad? Is this cynical? Like what's going on? So keep it very positive when you read books about school and play school and so on. The one with peers, that's the other one I was just talking about with items 9 and 10 on the top 10 list. There's really no replacement for experience, right? So playing school is great. You got to get your kid together with other kids, though, to build those skills. I mean, a pretty easy way to do it is even just like the playground. So if you can take your kid to the local playground, get them together with other kids, and you can start to see their behavior with their peers and shape that behavior. One thing to point out is that at this age, kids develop what's called situational friendships. Situational friendships, which means I'm a kid, I'm sitting in the sandbox. And you're a kid, you're sitting in the sandbox too. Yeah, we're friends. I'm a kid and I'm wearing rainbow shoes, you're wearing rainbow shoes, we're best friends. That's how friendships go. Friends often don't know each other's names and don't see each other a second time. That's friendships, and that's okay. The goal is not to see if your kid can develop lasting friendships right now. It's really to see if they can interact in a socially acceptable and healthy way with their peers. Great question. All right. Next question. How can my husband and I prepare our kids for the digital aspects of modern education? Great question. Fantastic question. One great thing you can do is to build familiarity, right? So in my house, we have a super inexpensive Bluetooth keyboard for an iPad. And our now 4-year-old has grown up with this thing around. It's just like this cheap plastic surface with keys on it, and she's, mashes the keys or whatever. And about a week ago, she was playing with it, and she specifically asked to hook it up to the iPad so it works, right? And she herself opened the Note, the default Note app on the iPad, and she typed her name with a QWERTY keyboard. Now, we've never taught her how to use a QWERTY keyboard. We just had it around, right? And we've also never taught her how to use that Notes app. She just found it, right? So one great way to prepare your kids for these digital aspects is by building familiarity, just having these things around the house, I mean, a QWERTY keyboard is not even screen time. It's just a keyboard. It's just lying around. But it built that familiarity for her. Another way is to find those digital tools that are safe and age appropriate and have great learning outcomes like ABCmouse, right? Here, you're building a healthy relationship between your kid and screen time, showing that screen time is not a time to get overexcited. It's not a time to witness sort of violent cartoon behavior. It's not a time to be exposed to peer aggression, sort of like social aggression that you see in some of these kids' shows. It's like, no. Screen time is good, it's healthy, and it's about learning. So expose your kid to those kinds of tools so that they can be prepared for learning with screen time rather than screen time being just kind of like junkie time. Great question. All right. Next one. Do I need to prepare my child for homework and study habits at this age? So my holistic answer is no, you don't. But then if I get more nuanced, I have to say, it depends on the school. So, there are entire societies that don't do homework at all in the early ages and don't even try to teach literacy, and yet they have 100% literacy when kids turn 18. So from the expert cognitive development viewpoint, it is not necessary to try to jam these skills so young in the hopes that just like this trajectory will take off and we're going to build a better workforce that way. It's not really how it works. Those investments need to occur at every stage into adulthood. It's not like you just jam it all down a 4-year-old's throat and then you're set. It doesn't work like that in reality, right? So my position is to push back on these things because they tend to take away from other opportunities that are very healthy and nurturing, like spending time with your adult, like playing outside, like playing with peers, and so on. However, that said, it may just well be the policy of your school that they do have some homework. So the way to prepare your kid for that is by having that homework area in the home and getting them happy and excited about it, and then also setting aside time to do that work together. All right, next question. What measures should I take to ensure my son's safety and well-being in the new school environment? That's a great question. One thing is that there is this element of trust, that you are trusting your school to be a safe environment, right? your kid's school is not going to have chef's knives lying around on the tables, right? It's set up to be safe and appropriate for your kid. If you go and visit the playground, that playground is perfectly designed for your son to play on. So a lot of this is the trust. When it comes to safety and well-being, a huge part of that, maybe the only part, is teaching them to listen to instructions. So this is like if there's a fire drill, if there's an earthquake, and so on, that your child understands as a group, the whole class is going to be listening to teacher and following teacher's instructions. A great way to expose your kid to that is to go to your local library and check out a book. There's tons of books on this kind of thing, right? They're picture books. They're perfectly appropriate and fun to read with your kid. But really, if you want to get at the safety and well-being thing, then that's very tightly related to what I was talking about before, which is talk up the teacher, talk up the classroom environment so that your son feels ready and excited to listen to the teacher's instructions. So that relationship, the teacher-kid relationship, is instrumental in child safety. And how often should we communicate with our child's future teachers to ensure a smooth transition? Your school may well have an event for new parents to go to the school ahead of time, right? So our school does this about 2 weeks before the start of the school year. And it's a little frustrating because we don't know anything about it. Like, we saw it on the website and we talked to someone, they're like, yeah, that's a thing that will happen. You'll hear more about it closer to the date. So I don't have too many details on it. But what I do know is that our kids' school does have an actual program where you go in advance, you meet the teacher, you see the school grounds, and you have that opportunity to form that relationship. Something that didn't make the top 10 list, but I would put it in the top 15, is to talk to your kid's teacher before the school year starts. And you're not talking to them to like vet the teacher or challenge them or anything. You're really speaking with the teacher to build that relationship so that the teacher knows your name and knows your kid's name, right? And it's like, hey, these parents are on board with me. This is the teacher's point of view, right? These parents are on board with me. They're supporting me. So I'm going to support them too. All right. So, yeah. Let's see. More questions here. What are the most important documents that we need to gather for school enrollment? Great question. I have that over here. Most important documents to gather for school enrollment. They are proof of vaccination, birth certificate, any kind of physical exam notes, and emergency contact information. You'll also need to have some kind of proof of residency, like a utility bill, or maybe 2 utility bills. Something to prove that you live in that area and therefore your kid is qualified to go to school there. What are common challenges my son might face in the first few months, and how do I prepare for them? Well, I think it really depends on the individual, right? So if you find that your son is gregarious, he likes being in new situations, he likes being with his peers, he likes new challenges, right? Then in that case, you actually don't need to worry about your kid not wanting to go or not being excited. Maybe instead, you need to worry about your kid not being able to follow instructions. Maybe your kid's SpongeBob-like exuberance ends up wrecking half the class sometimes. So that's one thing where it depends on the kid. Sometimes you need to remind your kid, oh, you have to learn how to keep your hands to yourself, or you have to learn how to sit. Just sit for a few moments when it's time for the whole class to sit, and you can practice those things at home. On the other hand, let's say your son is more timid, he likes to hang out with you, he's pretty shy around other kids, definitely doesn't like other adults, In that case, then it's a different challenge. Then you're going to be challenged with getting your son to feel okay about going into that room. That kind of kid might cry all day the first couple days, and so of course that's a challenging experience to go through. And in that case, you're going to want to build up the fun more. You're going to want to practice ways that your kid can interact. This is one thing. It's something that's so subtle and so part of human nature that we kind of miss it, right? When kids play together, observe this the next time you're at the playground. when kids play together, something has to initiate that. And many kids can do this instinctively. They don't need to be taught, but not all kids. Some kids, they'll play by themselves. They're looking over their shoulder. They want to play with the other kids, but they don't know how. And so teaching your kid how to make those initial conversations, which can be as simple as walking up and saying, "Hi, can I play with you?" Or even just going close to the other kid and playing near them. We often say, just in parlance, we say, oh, you have to teach your kids how to make friends. You're not really teaching them how to make friends, actually. Because again, at this age, it's situational friendships. You're really teaching them how to interact in that moment with kids. And so that has a lot to do with getting close, saying hi, asking, can I play with you, saying, do you want to play with me, giving a high five. Great question. How can I foster a positive attitude towards learning in my child from an early age? I said this in, I said this in a social media post that I have yet to send to the team, but I shot something pretty awesome last night. Find ways to say yes. If you want to encourage a positive attitude towards learning, engage your kid in conversation frequently and find ways to say yes. So everything that your kid says, even if it's something that's factually wrong, I would encourage you to say yes and then to build on that. And the example that I used in this thing that I shot yesterday was we were with a peacock. We have peacocks. And on the back of a peacock, there's a design, a natural design that looks like scales. It looks like mermaid scales. It's amazing. And my elder daughter said, look, it has scales. It has scales. Excuse me. And I didn't understand. I thought that my child was confusing feathers for scales. But I didn't say no. I said, yes, all birds have scales. Look at his feet. He has scales on his feet. Now, it turns out my daughter was referring to the design. So then I corrected myself, and I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, you're right. Yeah, they're feathers, and the feathers look like a scale design. And there you're finding ways to connect things. You're talking about scales, you're talking about feathers. You can open it up and say all birds have scales and feathers. You could say all birds are reptiles, and you can see by their scaly feet. So find ways to say yes, and find ways to keep that conversation going. If you talk a lot, it creates a lot of opportunities to learn and a lot of opportunities to feel like learning is fun because you're talking with your parent. All right. Last one. Thank you, Kate. All right, last question. And then I'm going to leave you with a challenge after this. Okay, last question. What role do nutrition and sleep play in school readiness? What role do nutrition and sleep play in school readiness? Well, I'm about to find out, given that my school-ready daughter lives, at least last night, on a diet of frosted animal crackers and couldn't get herself to sleep until 11 p.m. Nutrition and sleep are very important. And that's why I mentioned before, what item was it on the list here? I think it was item, number 7, establish a routine. It's tough. I completely understand how tough it is to get disciplined about food and sleep routines, but that's what we have to do, you and I together, that's what we have to do in the 4 months to go, is try to trim down on the animal cracker dinners and the 11 p.m. insomnia bouts, and try to get our kids in a better place so that they are eating right and sleeping well before school. Just to add to that, the lever that we have for getting to bed earlier is actually to wake your kid up earlier. So one great thing that you can do to help with all this is to discipline yourself. So get yourself up earlier, get things going earlier, open the windows earlier, get breakfast going earlier, get your kid up earlier, and that will help them to go to sleep earlier as well. You also want to limit screen time right before bed, limit food right before bed as well, because that also can wake up your kid. Have a healthy meal earlier on, and of course make sure your kid is running around as much as they possibly can during the day. Lots of outdoor time, lots of play time. But again, I should take my own advice. So I'm going to leave you now with a challenge. I just gave you this top 10 list. I'm not going to challenge you with number 1 because I think a lot of people have already enrolled their kids for school. So I'm leaving out number 1. But your challenge is number 2, which is the shopping for kids' school supplies together. So I'm going to challenge you between now and the next webinar, you are going to go and get your kid's backpack, whatever backpack is that makes them most excited, and their water bottle and their pencil case. So that means you have to find out from the school what it is they need. Whatever it is they need, you're going to get that stuff now so that you're not freaking out about it in August. You're going to get it now, you're going to get your kid's name on it, and you're going to prove it to me between now and the next webinar. So I think you can do it. If you get this one off the list, you'll feel great. There's only 10 things. Get this one off the list. Do that school shopping. Put your kid's name on everything, and then show it to me. I'm looking forward to it. And I'll do the same thing, too. I got some unicorn backpack shopping in my future. All right, so thank you so much. That's all the time that we have for today. Let's cue the teleprompter thing. I usually say something at the end. I can never remember. Oh, we don't have it. Never mind. We don't have it. So what I encourage you to do is to follow us on TikTok and Instagram. What's our handles right now? At ABCmouse on TikTok and Instagram. Should have been able to memorize at ABCmouse, you'd think. And we'll see you for our next webinar on getting your kid ready for school. I want to see the backpack next time. Until then, we'll see you next time.